Batman Beyond has had a series that has gone from Batman Beyond to Batman Beyond Neo Year, in which Bruce Wayne died, and now we're seeing the aftermath in Batman Beyond Neo-Gothic. Today's going to be the full story of Batman Beyond Neo-Gothic, every issue within that series. I hope you guys enjoy. The group of kids move through the streets of Neo-Gotham, through the darkness of the back alleys until they come to the cat. They offer him a coin and he steps aside to allow them through the crack in the wall. There they're greeted by green glowing lights, and when they step through, they are surrounded by a forest alive with fruit. The cat smiles as he watches them pick the fruit and take large bites, but the cat's eyes widen as he realizes that something is wrong. Vines twist out, wrapping around the children, dragging them into the forest. They reach out, they cry for help, but the cat could do nothing. Then he turns away, running off into the night. Lightning crashes overhead as the rain pours endlessly onto Neo-Gotham, the flash of light illuminating Batman, who leaps into the darkness, gliding over his city. Cave, this is the fifth signal tonight. Terry growls into his radio, asking if Gestalt is trying to kill him. But the techno-humanoid hive mind merely points out that the living city of Gotham once kept crime rates low, but with it gone, crime has risen. Trust me, I know, Terry says as he wings down, preparing for another fight. He moves through his city, taking out the Joker's gang members, and Professor Pig's members, and Shriek in the city. While he's fighting, he speaks to the former detective Beam, who points out that if Terry keeps pushing himself this hard, the city won't even have Batman to protect it. Terry finally agrees, calling it a night, heading back to his apartment overlooking the city, sitting at the kitchen table, and he begins to drift off. That is until he's awakened by the video phone. He looks up to see his mom's image appearing. "Hi, Mom. How's the metropolis?" he says softly. They talk briefly, with his mom pointing out that she doesn't miss Gotham, and that Terry should be taking care of himself, asking if he's spoken to Dana since he asked them all to leave the city when living Gotham took over. Terry tries to explain himself, but they're interrupted when Beam finally arrives. Terry hangs up on his mother and allows Beam to pull him into the dark of their bedroom. The next night, Batman is patrolling once more, but he's called to the cave when Gestalt points out a disturbing pattern has begun to arise within the city. Terry swoops in, landing in the cave. "Just another day in Neo-Gotham. How can we help?" Terry asks the living hive mind. Gestalt continues to look at their monitors, not turning to acknowledge their ally. Data Coalition indicates high rate of identical disappearances. Children, all children. They sneak out at night, take money, and they never return. Boomma went on foot to interface directly with the families, Gestalt tells him, but also explains that the city is claiming the disappearances are due to sinkholes forming in the structural integrity of the old buildings. The radio comes back to life as Beam arrives at the apartments where the children went missing. "You won't believe who I found here. Donovan Lumos," she growls as she continues to watch the rich tech magnate speak to the gathered crowds, explaining that Lumos Industries is reaching out to fix the problem of the people going missing and supposed structural issues of the apartment buildings that are supposedly to blame. Lumos looks at the crowd and smiles. "Today I've acquired this entire city block, and tomorrow I'll demolish it," he says, explaining to the crowd that everyone will be rehoused within 24 hours of the demolition. "Oh, I just absolutely hate this man," Beam says into a radio, and on the other end, Terry is looking at images of the crime scene. "We have to get to the bottom of this. Fast," he says, staring at the images and the sinkholes. "The kids are being taken down. That gives us a place to start." So a short time later, Terry is putting on civilian clothes and he begins to descend. He goes somewhere that he's never been before, and as he walks through the creaking metal stairs, he remembers the things that Bruce used to tell him, about how Gotham would build itself up, but always on the bones of itself. How Neo-Gotham rose above what is now known as Gotham. Terry stops, staring down at the lights of the old city that plunges into endless night. He moves through the streets, seeing the many gangs and splicers, and he finally comes up to the street corner where a cat hybrid man smiles at him. The cat holds up a fresh-looking orange, offering it. "Genuine article. Vitamin rich," the hybrid says with a smile. "How much?" Terry says, walking up, and the cat's smile gets wider. "For you? A tourist from the top side, 50 creds. Terry holds up a credit chip, asking how the hybrid knew he was from the top side. The cat shrugs. "Hey, you covered it well enough. Good step. Desperate look in your eye, but you don't smell right," he says as he brushes his nose. Terry nods, holding up another chip, asking if the hybrid can show him around, show him deeper into Old Gotham, help him find the missing children. The hybrid refuses, walking away, not wanting any trouble from the topside. He moves to the dark alleys of the city until he turns a corner and finds Batman standing before him. The cat pulls back in anger and fear. Oh, I get it. The money's got some muscle. Famous Batman coming down here to fight crime, busting up a kid. Batman regards him grimly. Only if I have to. Batman looks at him, explaining that kids have gone missing, lost in the shadows of Gotham Deep. He needs to find them, but he doesn't know the land. I need a guide, Batman says softly. And the hybrid thinks on it for a moment before turning back to the Dark Knight. 100 credits per level. They shake in agreement. With a wave of his arm, the hybrid begins to lead Batman through Gotham Deep, telling the Dark Knight to call him Kyle. But Kyle refuses to call Batman Batman. He knows that the man beneath the mask is the same man that offered him money, 'cause he can smell it on him. Terry, my name's Terry. Batman finally sighs, and Kyle smiles his wide grin. Nice to meet you, Terry. Now keep up. They finally arrive at a massive hole in the pavement. And here we are. There might be other ways down, but this one's mine. Kyle then stares into the darkness of the hole. Okay, I'm only gonna say this once, cause this is as deep as I've ever gone. There's death in the roots. Stay close, stay alive. They both land with a splash into the hole, and Batman's symbol lights up, bathing the tunnels in a red light. But something reaches out, grabbing him, a massive scaled claw. Yes, feeding! Feast on the bat! Killer Croc growls as he lifts Batman into the air, stomping away. Well, crap! Kyle hisses as he watches the monster leave. Croc continues to drag Batman lower, with the Dark Knight struggling, reaching out his wrist blades to try and find purchase on the ancient stones. He pops his wings, throwing out batarangs, but this new kaiju Croc releases him, flinging him hard into the water below. Terry struggles to his feet, looking up at the towering monster that Croc has become. The creature launches at him, but Terry boosts up and away. Killer Croc, we thought you were dead. Batman also thought you could be reasoned with. Waylon, right? He thought underneath all of the mutagen, you were a good guy, Batman says, but Croc swings his tail, knocking him into the sky. No, Bass! Eat you! He roars. Batman slabs back onto the ground, but manages to struggle up and avoid Croc's clashing teeth. Guess Mr. Jones isn't home anymore. He then pushes back against the wall as Croc's teeth get closer. Tomb is mine! Closed forever! You're nothing but bones! He roars, but a blast of fire suddenly sails through the air, slamming into Croc's head, knocking him away. Batman turns in surprise to see Kyle standing nearby with a small lighter in his hands. Come on, topside, look sharp! Kyle yells, motioning Batman to a nearby tunnel. And move fast, because it's basically all of my lighter fluid, Kyle shouts. Batman boosts into the air, joining Kyle, and the two begin to run through the tunnels. As the pair run through the tunnels, Batman looks over his shoulder, questioning how Kyle made such a large fireball. What can I say? A cat's got some secrets, Kyle says before asking if Terry has an idea of how to escape Killer Croc. What? I thought you were my guide to the underground, Terry points out, and they stop at a junction for a brief moment. Yeah, that was before the giant monster. Kids are probably dead by now. Odds are the lizard Minotaur ate them before we even got here. But before taking off down one of the tunnels, he explains that he smells fresh air. Terry stops, pointing out that Killer Croc said that he was guarding something called the Tomb, that he seemed to be starving. He's like a guard dog, left down here way too long, Terry says, and he looks at Kyle, explaining that he can't leave now. This is the legacy. It's what Batman is. Hope. And he turns back towards the tunnels. Meanwhile, in the Neo-Gotham above, Beam has gone to the old apartments and is now speaking with the families of the missing children. They watch as the nearby buildings are torn down by Lumos Industries, but everyone is shocked as the rest of the area begins to shake. Everyone rushes inside, thinking that it was some sort of earthquake, but Beam is filled with fear. Oh God, Batman's down there, she whispers to herself, thinking of her boyfriend. But back in the tunnels below, Terry and Kyle stagger as the tunnels begin to shake. Kyle tries to run, but Terry shakes his head. Do you hear that? Through the walls? That's not an earthquake, it's the Croc, Terry shouts, and the wall suddenly begins to crack next to them, revealing the massive teeth of Killer Croc as he pushes through the wall and slams Batman to the floor. Feast on the bat! Croc bellows, and Terry and Kyle are knocked down another tunnel, with Croc following, continuing to knock Batman away. Kyle, get to cover! Batman shouts as he slammed again. Crashing into the ground, he rolls until he slams into a wall. But Kyle isn't running. He stands his ground as Croc turns to him. "All right, you old lizard, here we go," Kyle hisses, and he begins to trace symbols in the air, creating images of light as he begins to chant a magical spell. Finally, he uppercuts Croc, sending the massive kaiju monster slamming into the ceiling and crashing back to the ground. Batman just gets to his feet, and he looks at his guide in astonishment. "Did you just..." he begins to say, but Kyle shrugs, explaining that he never had a name for that particular spell. "Don't tell me you've never seen a magical Catboy before," Kyle points out. And finally, Terry turns away shrugging. "Of course magic is real. Of course it is. Obviously," he whispers to himself. Batman turns back to another hole that Croc has smashed open into the ground, pointing out that he still believes that Croc was kept down here to guard something. He looks at Kyle and points out that they need to continue downward, and he pops a flare, tossing it into a hole. Meanwhile, back in Neo-Gotham, Beam is angry with Lumos, pointing out that his explosions are tearing apart the city, destroying people's homes and lives. But Lumos smiles at her. His light-bending powers creating platforms and structures. He taps a button on his machine and a new building is suddenly created out of light. As night falls on Gotham, with the tap of this button, the future is lit, he says as the new building rises. Beam looks in astonishment. "Holy hell," she whispers, and Lumos smiles at her. "See? This is the apex of my technology at work. A hard light building that houses thousands. To build our future, we must leave the darkness where it belongs." But back in Gotham Deep, Batman's flare finally finds the bottom, illuminating exactly what a kaiju killer Croc was left to guard. Batman's greatest secret. The ancient seal of the Tomb of the Owls. Batman and Kyle descend into the darkness, arriving at the seal of the Tomb of the Owl. Batman presses it, and the tomb slides open, allowing them to access the ancient labyrinth of the Court of the Owls. As they begin to make their way through, both glance at the owl masks on the walls. "Be careful, Kyle. This place is designed to drive you crazy and kill you once you're there," Batman warns in a hushed tone. He explains that he was trained to fight this place by the former Batman, when suddenly the masks begin to glow from the strange fungus on the walls, and the two begin to move quicker. "Keep up, this is gonna get weird," Batman warns. And as they make their way through the corridors, Batman questions Kyle, demanding to know how he learned magic, but Kyle refuses to explain his backstory. "The last guy I trusted was lying through his teeth, so respectfully, pass," Kyle tells him. The two finally pass through a massive door, arriving at the court's audience chamber. "Yes, Terry. After all these years, you finally come home," a voice calls out, and Batman looks up in shock at the audience chamber filled with the undead members of the court, their bodies nothing more than withered husks, now controlled by strange growths and fungus. The creatures lean forward, pointing at the pair. "Batman, so kind! You bring us a present," the creature hisses as one. Batman motions Kyle back to the door. "Back away, slowly, we gotta get out of here," he whispers to him. "Don't gotta tell me twice," Kyle hisses as his ears go flat, but the mushroom zombies lean over the audience chamber further, claiming that Kyle's face haunts their dreams. "The cat with the garden secrets under their skin," they hiss in chorus. The zombies turn into a singular voice as a bat silhouette walks among them. "And now, Terry, you bring him to us," the voice says. "I'm so proud of you." Terry looks up in surprise as the figure looks like Bruce in the shadows, but he knows this isn't his old mentor. "Return the children, you cowards! Enough of these mind games," Batman shouts, but the bat shakes his head. "No games, Terry. The garden below needs the children, just as it needs the boy who fed them to it, just as the court needs the heir of Gotham again," the bat says, stepping out of the shadows, revealing the corpses of a Talon that once guarded the labyrinth, now taken over by the fungus. The creatures rise up on tendrils. "Give us Kyle, and let the garden feed!" The bat snarls, and the creature leaps at Kyle, but Batman moves fast, pulling the cat boy to safety. "How do they know my name?" Kyle shouts in surprise, and the bat creature launches an attack at Terry. He blocks the blows, but the strange tendrils wrap around his arm, flinging him through the air. Nearby, the fungus zombies continue to chant, calling for the garden to be fed Kyle. The fungus Batman slams Terry into the ground, ignoring the Batman's blows and leading close. Gotham will be saved by what it has buried, the fungus growls, but Terry shakes his head. No! It'll be saved by me! He shouts, kicking out and knocking the creature away. He then fights his way back to Kyle. Look at me. What is this about, Kyle? How do they know you? Why do they want you? Batman demands, but Kyle shakes his head. I don't know. I've never been here before. That's kind of the whole point, he says, and Terry looks in shock. The whole point? I hired you, Terry says, but Kyle smiles. Did you? He raises his hand, creating a magical shield that protects them from the creatures, and Kyle finally tells Terry who taught him magic. At his lowest point, he thought he had no one left in the world, and he was approached by John Constantine, who promised to teach him. Kyle thought that Constantine offered him a hand in friendship. But he betrayed me, screwed me over, and he left me to die the same slow death that kept him kicking through the last century. And I just got left with all of his curses, Kyle growls. He was the first person I ever saw go into the ground. John Constantine got a final resting place, a garden of light at the end of his god-awful life. Terry finally understands that Kyle has been pushing deeper, trying to get back to the man who ruined his life. Kyle nods as the magical shield begins to crack and fall. And now I guess I'm getting us both killed. Guess that's life in the gutter, Kyle whispers as the magical shield drops, but Batman pulls out his batarangs, fighting off the fungus as he throws them around the room. We're not at the end yet, Terry tells his friend, but the bat creature rushes them with the batarangs exploding. The entire audience chamber begins to crack and crumble around them, and the floor gives way, with the entire room plummeting further into the darkness of deep Gotham. Batman continues to fall into the darkness, with Kyle disappearing before his eyes, but the darkness begins to charge. His wings pop out, but they're not red. They're a multitude of flowers, colors beginning to spread before his eyes. Terry slams into the ground, but when he sits up, he isn't Batman anymore. He's standing in his family's old apartment. He rounds a corner, seeing his younger self arguing with his father. Time flashes forward, and he sees his mother telling a younger Terry that his father has died. Suddenly, he's Batman again, watching the scene. This isn't how it happened, he whispers, and he looks up to see the fungus bat leaning over the body of his father, laughing. Terry leaps at the monster, chasing it away into the darkness. Then he looks down at his father's body, covered in the strange fungus, with his mother calling out to him, tears streaming from her eyes as she reaches out, begging him to let her back into his life, to let her protect him. Let me keep you safe in the root, she calls as she dissolves into a plant. The images keep flashing before Terry's eyes. His brother Matt is suddenly Robin, and they're swinging through the rooftops of Gotham. Bruce is standing there smiling at the young Robin. There's always another orphan, he says with an evil smile. Suddenly, Terry is standing in a club with Dana dancing nearby. He rushes to her side, telling her that she needs to get away, to escape to safety. The lights begin to flash, and Terry is falling through the air again. He opens his eyes, finding himself in an alleyway surrounded by cats. He looks down and realizes that he is in a cat's body, the bat symbol still on his chest. Meow, this is interesting, he says to himself. Cat Terry looks down at the scene of the other cat hybrids and sees a young Kyle who wishes to be a part of the pack, wants to do what he can to help, but the leader of the pack snarls, slashing at him, demanding to know if he can survive. The pack turns on him, stomping him into the ground, but it is later that the young Kyle looks up to see the trench-coated man standing before him, cigarette smoke streaming from his nostrils. John Constantine offers to teach the young cat his secrets. Terry watches as Constantine teaches the hybrid magic, teaching him how to survive in this world. But on his deathbed, Constantine performs one final spell. Death may not be the end, he says as Kyle falls to the ground, his body convulsing. There are things that'll make you wish it was, John says, and as he stands, his body is suddenly well again. As he walks across the room, green roots begin to grow at his feet. He reaches the door, pulling on his coat and lighting a cigarette. Thanks for the lift, Squire. Sorry to leave you with all the baggage. He heads off into the snowy night, but Kyle begins to follow behind him, demanding to know what happened. More roots begin to grow and wrap around Constantine as the old magician explains that he gave Kyle all of his curses, the things that would have forced his soul to be split 100 ways between angels and demons. But I also gave you magic. Fair trade, says I. So stop meowing and let me die. John says as the roots begin to take him into the earth, leaving Kyle behind. No! Kyle yells as he watches Constantine disappear into the dirt, but he suddenly looks up into the sky. This isn't how it happened, Kyle whispers, and both Batman and Kyle look up as the fungus bat descends upon them. But Terry rushes forward, blocking the creature's attacks. No! Batman isn't dead, he says as he punches the monster away, and the Batman turns to Kyle as the roots begin to grow around him. He pulls the hybrid into a hug. Don't be afraid. The past's a shadow, but we're the night. They both suddenly look up, finding themselves in a shadowy forest, and something moves through the trees near them. You hear that? Terry asks, and Kyle nods. The bat thing is dead, he whispers, when suddenly there's a light. Batman whirls, his batarangs ready as Kyle prepares a spell. The new creature looks at them, tangles of flowers and roots growing around them, protecting the golden bulbs that house the children. We are the roots, and we are your death, the new creatures state. Batman and Kyle launch into battle as the defenders of the Green, driven beneath Gotham for decades, launch an assault on them. Terry looks back at his friend, ordering him to leave while he fights the monsters. You go find Constantine! I'll pull the weeds, Terry shouts, whirling through the air, slashing through the vines with his gauntlets. Poison Ivy I recognize, and Black Orchid, he says as he whirls, slashing the massive arm off of a Swamp Thing-like creature. I gotta admit though, I have no idea who you are, Muckman, and you're not growing on me. Leaving Batman to his fight, Kyle moves deeper within the subterranean chamber that they have found themselves in, following his magic to his former teacher, John Constantine. Finally, he finds the missing children trapped within glowing seeds surrounding a massive root. Batman, I found the kids! Kyle shouts towards the battle, but the Black Orchid rises up behind him. You cannot find that which isn't lost. Back at the fight, Batman is slammed into the ground by a massive vine, while Poison Ivy snarls at him, proclaiming that the city above is a blight on the world and the Dark Garden will once again rise and reclaim the Earth. Black Orchid slashes at Kyle, knocking him away, proclaiming that the children were tossed away by society, and that they are the seeds that will sprout and be taught to tend the garden. Kyle staggers to his feet, blood seeping from the wounds on his face. Kids aren't seeds. They don't deserve to be buried. But you certainly deserve the fire. He stands, magical fire leaping out of his hands, burning into the powerful vines of the Dark Garden. As the Guardians of the Green begin to scream in pain, Terry gets to his feet. He turns his eyes to the massive root in the center of the chamber and remembers something that Bruce once taught him about botany. Every tree has a taproot, an absolute center, and I think I just found theirs. Batman says as he leaps into the air, slashing into the root, pushing deeper inside. You old dreg, I know it's you that's been stealing the children, Terry shouts, finally figuring out the truth. They're mine to protect, the deep voice says, echoing through Terry's mind. These children have families, they have lives, Batman growls, but the voice disagrees. They are already dregs, forgotten, desolate, dead roots to be tread upon. But in the right hands, like mine, they can be magic. Batman pushes into the taproot, finding the glowing center, where the corpse of John Constantine is entwined with the roots, feeding it his magic. Kyle pushes through the hole that Batman created, his eyes falling upon his former mentor, anger bubbling up in his voice. John freaking Constantine! He bellows, leaping down, shouting for John to take back the curses that he passed on to Kyle's body. But Batman holds him back. I saw what he did to you, and you're gonna get your justice, Terry promises, turning back to the corpse that John Constantine has become, demanding to know why John has kidnapped these children and spread his rot far beneath the city. Give me answers, or I'll give you pain, Batman growls, and John's eyes merely glow as he glares at the heroes. You think I can still feel pain? You think I give two shakes of a dog end about fear? I'm dead. I'm free. I'm finally the root of the power. I am the Green, me! I'm just saving the little that I can. Terry doesn't believe him, explaining that Bruce once said that Constantine was little more than a dirtbag street magician. That John trying to protect anything doesn't make any sense. I've heard enough ghost stories since I came into the dark. It's time I got the truth. Batman snaps, and John grows before their eyes, his decaying mouth opening wide. You want the truth? Your world is dying. A crisis looms beyond the dark. Only innocence can be saved. John bellows, and Batman stares at him. From what? Far above, in Neo-Gotham, Lumos sits in his office of light, far over the streets of Neo-Gotham, where he is preparing to activate his light to construct a new city. He reaches for his phone, which is also made of a light construct, and he puts a call into the former detective, Sunbeam Boonma. He congratulates her on her fight to try and save Old Gotham and feels sympathy for her loss, but reminds her that change is inevitable. This hasn't changed, Lumos. It's erased. It's an injustice. Sunbeam says, but from his tower, Lumos nods his head and prepares for the activation. Yeah, the future really doesn't give a flux, he says as he taps the button, and Sunbeam is surprised by the melancholy in his voice. You almost sound like you regret it, she says, and he nods. I almost do, he says as he taps the button, and suddenly the city begins to shake as the buildings begin to fall, but they aren't stopping, and more buildings fall with them. Lumos, what have you done? She shouts into the phone as she watches parts of Gotham topple, but Lumos is shaking his head. What the hell is this? That sinkhole, that's not a part of my plan. My detonations were very controlled, he shouts as the center of Gotham seems to be opening up. Far below, Constantine has had enough, his roots beginning to push upward. The wound that you feel! It opens the way to the dark skies above. This place of safety is gone. The garden is shattered. There's only one recourse left for our seeds to thrive. Batman looks to Kyle. I need to get back to Gotham. What are you talking about? The problem is still very much not solved, Kyle tells him, and Batman puts a hand on his friend's shoulder, believing that he can stop John while Batman saves the people above. You might think that you're a cat, but I see a lion, Terry says before rocketing upward. And in Gotham, people are running in fear as the roots and monsters once buried far beneath them begin to rise. As Batman rockets back upwards towards the city, the commissioner knows they only have one chance. Light the signal, is the command. In his tower, Lumos runs in fear of the root monsters as they are rising up against him, while Sunbeam stares in shocked horror at the massive flower that grows from the sinkhole in the center of Gotham. But Terry returns, rocketing up beneath the city to find it under attack. Only Batman can save Gotham now. Below them, Kyle turns back to his former mentor. John, you absolute tosser! You have to stop this now! He roars, stepping forward, ordering John to stop his assault and remove the curses from Kyle's body. I think not, Squire, John says in Kyle's mind. But the cat shakes his head. No! None of that! You speak to me with your mouth or I'll put my fist right through it! Kyle hisses, stepping right up to John's face. John's body begins to twist and his mouth opens wide, the decaying skin cracking as it moves for the first time in decades, and he laughs. The laughter echoes through the chamber until John begins to cough out bile and decay that hardened in his body. You think you're scarier than the damn Batman? My kingdom is almost complete. A place of safety for the innocent, forever. Not one more scar. Just like... It's gonna be beautiful, kid. Above, Batman is doing his best to protect the people, but there are too many monsters now. Batman into the cave. Patch me to Beam. We need a damn plan, he growls into the comms. Sunbeam is moving and fighting, her sidearm thundering as she tries to protect who she can. It's Gestalt that suggests activating the Gordon Initiative, which would use the systems that Luminous put into place during the Living Gotham's attempt to control the population. It would make you a criminal, Batman. Or worse, it could aid in the reactivation of the Living Gotham Protocol, the one that killed Bruce Wayne. Regardless, many will most likely die. Sunbeam whirls, firing her weapon back at Black Orchid as she runs through the streets, admitting that she doesn't think they have a choice. And Batman nods, and he narrows his eyes, admitting the truth. Gestalt, get it done. But open a channel, we need trust. Below, Kyle finally looks at John and explains the truth. That long ago, John took Kyle in, but he betrayed him. John made Kyle feel like he belonged, but it was all a ruse to get the curse from John's body. You gave me a life of magic, but it turned my soul to ash. He points out that John is doing the same thing all over again with every child that he kidnapped. And expecting what? That it'll work out better this time? That's the definition of insanity, John. Kyle begins to work his magic, scrawling glyphs on the ground around John's root. Using his own blood in the spell, he finally reaches the last lesson about magic and life. The thing that's worse than death is living without forgiveness, Kyle says, casting the spell. John Constantine, I forgive you, he says quietly. Above, Terry is broadcasting his message across the city. Batman is telling the people that he and his team have activated the Gordon Initiative. This will allow everyone to use the holographic nanite technology that is living in their bloodstream, a product of the living Gotham trying to take control of the people to become Batman. One Batman isn't enough to save Gotham this time. He needs the people to help him, but they have to opt in. Batman refuses to take people's free will away from them. I'm just asking that you trust me. My name is Terry McGinnis. I was born in Crown Point. I was a juvenile delinquent. And then I put on the cowl. I became Batman. If I can do it, so can you. Terry says across the city. And the people hear Terry McGinnis' words. If you think you can save the city, you can be Batman too. He finishes, and the people, they nod. They agree. They rise up. The hard light nanites begin to work, and the people of Gotham City are now transformed into an army of Batmen. They rise up against the monsters, they fight back, they reclaim their streets. Below, John Constantine looks at Kyle with sadness, and he shakes his head. Don't want to be forgiven. I was as bad as the world gets, John says quietly. But Kyle shakes his head, and he points out that John is just an old man. And he made some mistakes. But John needs to stop his tantrum. He needs to try and leave the world a bit better than he found it. Up above, the fungal-controlled killer Croc is rampaging through Gotham, but Batman is now leading a squad of Batmen behind him. Together, they slam into the beast and knock him to the ground. And down below, Kyle offers John a smoke, once again asking him to take the curses away. John smiles as he puffs. I bet you're going to do amazing things. Gonna have to stop what's coming. He wheezes, leans back, and smiles, happy to help one person to make their life better. He pulls the curses out of Kyle's body, and he leans back with a sigh. Sawed off, Kyle whispers sadly, and John smiles. Go screw yourself. He gasps as his body sinks into the ground, the root dying beneath him as the magic finally leaves. Above, the roots all fall to the ground, defeated and dead, and it's over. Later, it's Terry and Kyle who look down on the city, which has become quiet. Lumos has disappeared somewhere in the chaos, hiding his face from the city. He was screwed completely, but in the end he knew it. Just because you hurt the ones who love you doesn't mean you've broken their hearts forever. Kyle says with a sigh, and Terry nods, thinking of the ones that he's hurt. Shit deserves love too, you know? Yeah, I guess they do. As Gotham moves on, it rebuilds as it always does. The children are found and removed from the seed pods that they were kept in, returned to their families if they can. Gestalt begins to work alongside the city, hoping to make it better. Croc is brought back to the surface where he's taken care of. Kyle begins to move through the streets, using his power to help the people, like he always wanted. Later, Terry holds Sunbeam close in his apartment, commending her for her interview and pointing out people are talking about her mayoral run. She smiles and tells him to change into normal clothes so they can meet Barbara Gordon for dinner. Terry nods and he looks at his phone. I'm gonna need a minute, he says quietly, and Sunbeam nods, leaving him alone. Terry sits tapping his phone, putting in a call to Dana. It rings for a moment before she finally picks up. Hello? Terry? Or am I talking to Batman? Terry smiles as he sits, staring out at the city. It's just me. Just Terry. And I owe you some answers. Thank you for watching today's episode of Full Story, where we take stuff from Comicstorian and combine it into a giant video so that you can enjoy it. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time right here.